Hey, what's up, guys? Swim here with a extremely unfortunate angle in the We Play Studios in Kiev. So they set me up in this little room. I don't have a ton of resources here, but I'm able to bring you a patch note analysis a day later than I would have liked to. But at least it gave me time to think about all the changes and make sure that I know exactly how I feel about everything. This is a really big update, and I plan on getting a little bit in depth with this stuff. So right off the bat, head-to-head, players are now paired off to fight directly against each other and both take part in the same shared combat. This is a really big improvement to the game. It's something that people have been saying for a long time. TFT has this. It's part of the reason that a lot of people like TFT. It's kind of the more popular game right now. And this is definitely helpful. Honestly, the ability to have boards fight directly against each other, it just feels better for new players. It feels better for like spectators for tournaments. I was casting like the day 2 after this patch dropped, and this was actually a really big help for the cast. It just made things a lot more cohesive. Takes a bit to get used to if you're already used to the old system, but it's more intuitive overall. The one downside is that it does technically increase variance. So I think that's something that can be maybe like decreased if you want to keep an even level in different ways. But that's easy to fix. That's not like hard at all. This is a good change. When an odd number of players are present, one of the players fights a clone of the actual player. And this is exactly the same process that happens in TFT. So basically, when you have like 7 players left, the player that doesn't have a pair to fight on their board will effectively just be fighting one of the random boards, a second board of one of the 6 other players. And it's just going to be like a phantom board that can't take damage but can deal damage, right? It's just the best way to do this. Leaderboard now pairs off players when they're in head-to-head combat. This is just like a UI change. Basically, you'll see it in your game, but effectively, all this means is that you'll be seeing the leaderboard on the side just like match the players in the pairs based on the combat. Okay, new ranked system. So overall, I want to say I feel very good about this patch. I think this patch puts the game in a really good direction. This section here is probably the one thing that I really disagree with in terms of the direction of the game. I don't like the changes to the rank system. I think it doesn't really make too much sense. That being said, I'm pretty confident Valve will revert it, or maybe like do some kind of middle ground. Still not really sure, but basically how it works is now rank changes basically on where you finish in a ranked match and does not depend on your opponent's rank. This, in my opinion, is actually kind of nonsensical. It is no longer an ELO-based system. Before it was some variation of Glicka, which was based on ELO, which effectively is the whole point of it is, your opponent's MMR score will influence how much you gain and lose. And right now, it effectively doesn't. So there's some downsides there. First off, it makes the amount of points you gain kind of a lot more based on variance, and also it kind of makes climbing a grindier process more rewarding to players that play more. I just don't really like this. I personally think it's a mistake. I've talked to a lot of other players who agree it's probably a mistake, and I don't really think they're going to be keeping this system moving forward. New casual player mode. You can play multiplayer games without affecting your rank, and you guys know what casual means. It's casual. It's like unranked, right? And this is nice for me personally because it means I can dick around without having to, make a Smurf, right? And it'll still be, based on your own skill level. So it's really nice. I don't really want to have to make a Smurf. I haven't really played ranked seriously since I hit Lord. I've been kind of dicking around. And it's kind of annoying that I don't know. I mean, I have to climb back up, or I have to make a Smurf, and this is a good change to both of those. Okay, ranked multiplayer mode update. Your rank, which is your score is used to find opponents. Again, it's just a replacement to the MMR system. This is just nothing. It is basically embedded into the rank system that we were talking about. I've covered basically all of this. Okay. So this is all visual. I added 2-star and 3-star look upgrades for the following heroes, and you'll be pretty safe in assuming that they're going to do this with every hero in the entire game. So when you make it 2-star, when you make it 3-star, all of these heroes and eventually all of the heroes in the game will have unique visuals for those unique tiers, which is something Auto Chess had, and it was very successful. It's just cool. It's just a visual upgrade. Nothing really gameplay related to break down. Now we get into the real meat and potatoes of the patch, because there's a lot to break down here. Okay. Gameplay. Round damage eliminated for rounds 4 to 9. Round damage starts at round 11 at 2 damage and proceeds as before from then on. So basically how this works is effectively the only thing you need to know here is it's the same as before, except on round 4 to 9, you just lose 1 less health for getting killed in a board. Losing 1 board, you just lose 1 less health than before. That's the only difference, okay? And only on rounds 4 to 9. So basically it's a bit of a buff towards the idea of like lose streaking. But the best way to think about this change is it lowers your incentive a little bit in terms of playing for the board early, which means, for example, you'll see players do stuff like level a little bit later. We've been seeing in this replay tournament, a lot of players have leveled very slow compared to how they have in the past. You see a lot of players, a decent amount of players going to like level 6 on round 13 or something. Whenever a player loses a round against another player, the loser gains a free reroll the next round. This reroll is not stackable, so use it or lose it. Okay, so this is probably the single biggest change of the entire patch. It's very hotly contested. I think the knee-jerk reaction of a lot of people right away reading this is that this is OP, it's going to create lose streaking. I really like this change. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's pretty genius. I think that it has almost only upsides for the games. However, I could maybe see it being tweaked if it proves to have if it proves to need some kind of tweak. I think this makes the game healthy in a lot of ways. First of all, it is your kind of comeback mechanic. Like, you know, the TFT has like the carousel, Auto Chess has like a slightly higher degree of lose streaking and less health lost from losing. And now Underlords has this like re-roll on loss, which, like I said, just makes perfect sense to me. So part of why I really like this, a very large part, is it increases the agency and skill of the game in the early game a ton, right? And this is really, really, really important. Basically, the way to think about this is you have so many more decisions in the early game because you see so many more shops. Stuff like overflowing your board, which is to say, like, you know, using like going up to like 9 out of 5 or whatever on your board and having a full bench and an overflowing board just to be able to kind of temporarily extend your bench capacity for a turn, and then like reselling down if you don't hit what you needed in the next shop, the natural shop, is a very powerful strategy. People were already doing it. It's going to be even more important now. So you'll see, you know, there's a lot of skill going into that, as well as just more decisions in the early game, right? It makes stuff like more economy-based strats a little bit better, and it means that in the early game, you really don't want to be necessarily going out of your way to try to win streak. I wouldn't say necessarily that you're incentivized to lose streak. I don't think that's really the correct way to look at it. However, when you are on a bad start, you definitely don't want to be putting your gold into stuff like leveling up when you'd rather play for bench and play for economy. The other big thing about this change is that it effectively increases the amount of average rolls you'll see in a game. This has a lot of implications. It actually really, really drastically changes the game. You see players are playing for interest a bit slower, not because interest is less valuable, but because you might have a bit more rolls early, which means you have more things to buy. You'll see players go for 3 stars a lot more often because you get a lot more free rolls, which means that strategies that scale off of roll value is really important. There's this concept in Underlords and all these TFT like auto battlers, which is basically the idea of the value, the mathematical value that you get per roll. And the fact that you now get about 10 free rolls in every game is absolutely huge. It means strategies that scale with this concept of roll value will get a really, really big boost. So stuff that goes for 3 stars is an example of that, but also the idea of maybe trying not to play for the same strategies that other people are playing for. You'll see in this patch, because players have free rerolls, I think it's more optimal to try more so than ever to avoid playing strategies that too many other players are playing. What I mean by this is specifically like if you see 2 or more players also on knights, I probably wouldn't go knights at that point, unless of course you had a really good start for it or you think one of them is going to move off of it, right? So you just get a lot of free rolls in every game. It's a really, really big deal. It's a very drastic change, and I think it's just a really, really great thing to have in the game. I personally think that it's possible some tweaks need to happen. For example, strategies that don't do very well with 3-star units feel like they're a bit weaker because of this, because everything that does well with 3-star units got quite buffed by this. But all they have to do is kind of like maybe buff up some of the 3 stars of other strategies or give them compensation in other ways, right? Or some people are saying, the rerolls are just too much. So I guess there's an argument to make this only happen for the first 10 or 15 rounds of the game, which I guess could be fine. We'll see. I mean, I think something like that could end up being tested or ultimately necessary. I don't think that's necessarily likely, but it could happen. Either way, this is a really good step forward for the future of the game, in my opinion. I see almost only upsides with this really, really great change. Okay. General fixed solo games and tutorials. So this is mostly just like basically like bug fixes. Yep. There's basically nothing really like nothing substantial here. One thing is they added an option defaults on to automatically deploy units from your bench if you ever in the board and combat begins before you have time to do so yourself. So for example, if you accidentally forget to put a unit on, it'll like default and automatically deploy a unit on your bench, right? You can turn this off in settings if you want to ever open fort or run less than the maximum amount of units, right? Otherwise, there's no reason to turn this off. Okay. Spectating is just like a little bit better. I really like that they added this to the game. This is actually something I was messaging Valve specifically about. Since I was casting this tournament, I was like, could you possibly just like add this to the game? It's a big tournament. It would be really nice if you could quickly throw it in there. And we see, they complied, which is really, really great. You love to see a game dev studio that's going to be, kind of responding and communicating well with their player base and their needs. Okay, hero changes. Crystal Maiden. So we got a bit of a nerf here, basically. It's a little bit healthier, which is nice, but it's a 3 cost instead of a 2 cost. Overall, a bit of a nerf, but Crystal Maiden is still kind of a fundamentally abusable hero. Right now, I'd say mages are not weak per se. You can still go them. I mean, the fact of the matter is, because you want to be building things that other people aren't building much of right now, everything is kind of viable, right? Because of that. So something like Crystal Maiden, that represents mages is still fine. I don't think mages are one of the strongest alliances, but they're fine, right? Crystal Maiden is a really great hero in Scrappies. You can just run like 4 Scrappies and just throw in a Crystal Maiden without even completing mages, and she's